Hi, I'm Corey. Welcome to Creating with Scraps. The previous video I had mentioned that I would love to use Tracie Fox, the newest Lovely Layers kit that she created, simply because it's so beautiful and user-friendly. And a couple folks said that they didn't either remember or weren't sure if I had created these to share, so I selected these. And what I'm calling these is multi-pocket window trifolds. And I had 3 that I had already shown in the previous video, and so I used Tracie's paper, the newest kit, to create 3 more with just slight variations to show you. You can do it exactly the same, or depending on what product you have and what you want to work with, you can alter it. And they're all 3 strips like this of pattern paper, and one side I printed it with a coffee stain background, and then the other side is the front of the collage pages from the kit. And then I just cut them essentially in half and inked the edges so that we don't have to do that step. So it's the 8.5 by 11 or A4 for you folks, and just cut in half horizontally. So there's that. So the first one that I had shared was this little trifold. It's got a pocket in the back for a tag or whatever you want to put in it. It's got the pocket in the back, and then it has the transparency or window film pocket in the front, and then it's got a belly band on the side. And all 3 of the ones I'm showing are a variation of this, doing different things. The supplies you need for this are whatever paper you want, whatever lace or ribbon or trim you want, but the things that make it, you might have to have separate are some window film or transparency of some sort. You can use packaging. This is acetate. You can purchase it on Amazon. I happen to have a box, an old box from many, many years ago when we used this in the classroom with overheads. So you need some kind of a window film-ish. Also, plastic file folders, the clear ones, those work really well. They're a bit thicker, but they still work really well. So you'll need that. You'll need some type of dried flower to put inside, or dried leaf. And then and then paper. You don't have to have any of the other things, are optional. I much prefer to sew these with my sewing machine. You can sew it by hand, using one of these and then a pokey tool. So see how they're each marked at 1/8 inch marks. So you can lay this on your piece of paper and then use these as a guideline to pre-poke all the holes, and then you can sew it by hand if you don't have a sewing machine, or you can just use a sewing machine. It is pretty easy. Let's see, what else did you need? I think that was it. Oh, I used lace that I sewed onto a piece of paper, but you don't have to. I do it this way. Like, this is real old lace and it's real thin, so I put it on top of the same paper so that you could still see the lace pattern, but the paper doesn't catch. So it's not mandatory, but it's just one of those things that makes it handy. I had a piece of this particular lace, which is what I used, and I sewed it on top of a scrap of the paper that I just shared with you. And again, this one doesn't have fine holes or larger holes, so it's not as easy to catch things on, but you can also see, because it's lace, it has a little bit of stretch and a little bit of give. With it sewn onto the paper, it doesn't bulk as much, or it doesn't wiggle as much. Same thing with here. This one happened to have some bigger holes or more substantial holes, so being sewn onto paper makes it hold a little bit nicer, and when you still get the lace effect. And again, you can just use a piece of the pattern paper for the belly band. You don't have to use actual lace if you prefer not to. You can just cut a strip of this, because that's the whole purpose of the Lovely Layers. If you don't actually want to build layers on it, you get the effect of layers through the layers of printing that have been done. So keep that in mind. Anything I'm telling that you must have is kind of a guideline. But again, if we're going to do these type of pockets, you pretty much need some kind of a window film and some kind of a dried flower. Dried flowers. When you're choosing dried flowers, now I know there's a lot of different ways to do this, and you can be really fancy and such, but I am not. These little pink things I purchased somewhere at a show, and I thought they were really pretty. I don't know what flower it is. I don't know much about flowers, but you don't have to use actual flowers. This is Baby's Breath, and I wanted to show you something. This Baby's Breath is super easy because it presses easy, it presses quickly, and it dries I don't know if you can see there, but even with, I added some ink color in it because I wanted it to match the flowers I'm going to be working with. So I just put some distress ink down, spritzed it with water, tapped this in it, and then dried it. But you can see these were dried between book pages, so they're fairly flat. This is a piece, or here, these are some baby's breath that I just allowed to dry naturally, and you can see the difference. So I can still put this between window film if I didn't lay it flat, but what's going to happen is these little petals are going to pop off the edge, and so you might have some petals floating around, buds, I guess is a better word, buds floating around inside your plastic. Whereas if you dry it flat, it stays a little bit better. So just wanted to point that out. This is some sort of weed that I found this summer, and I dried a whole bunch of it, but I wanted to show you here too the difference in colors. I put this in the Tim Holtz ink. I think it was Wildflower or Wild Honey or something like that, an orangey color. And so it picked up and deepened the natural color of it. And you can do that with some of the flowers and change up the color. This is Status, which comes in a million different colors, and it's fairly sturdy. But look how bulky that is. So I would only use that on certain projects. Leaves work really well too. Here's a couple different kinds of leaves that I've just collected over time and stuck in there. And so you can see those are all fairly flat. That's another kind of weed, I guess, that I thought was really pretty. And then this mini daffodils, which will be blooming before too long, they press really nicely and really flat. Bigger daffodils have a little bit more moisture and they don't work quite as well, but they still work. But the mini daffs are fabulous. So I'm just putting that out there. So if you don't already have some, you can, maybe consider what type of flowers or wildflowers or what have you want to use to dry. So I'll put those there, and I'll put these off to the side. Now you can use washi tape to close the edges of the plastic window film. I don't find it works as well because you can washi is designed to be a temporary tape, so it doesn't hold super well, and it shows the bulk basically. So when you fold things over and you've got a line or something, you can see that through the washi. I'm just putting these up here out of the way. Again, that's one of the reasons I prefer sewing. But you can use washi. You can also use strips. And I prepped some in case we decide to use them. And you can use strips. These happen to be 3/4 inch wide strips folded in half, but you don't have to use that size. You can use, here I'll show you, I even cut some. Depending on how large the piece, this piece right here is, and if I'm wanting to wrap the edges of this piece with paper, if this is a bigger piece, I'll use a wider strip, like maybe 1/2 inch or 3/4 of an inch or an inch. Whereas if it's a smaller piece, I want it a lower profile. I don't want it to take over what I'm making. And so I'll make it 1/2 inch. So again, just depending on what size you're wanting to make, something to keep in mind. And here are the differences. These are not inked. This is 1/2 inch. And this is 3/4 of an inch, and this is 1 inch. And something to keep in mind, when you fold these, to put one on one side and one on the other side, and it's by far better to do that rather than taking one strip and putting it on the top and one putting it on the bottom. They do not, unless you sew it, they do not hold well on the two sides of the transparency because you need two sides of it. So I don't recommend doing that, and I have tried it. If I score these on my scoreboard, probably I won't get an absolutely perfect center fold. And the reason that matters is this. I'm going to show you how it is just off a little bit. I try when I'm doing this, I use a little bit thicker paper, but you can use thin paper. It doesn't have to be thicker, but I usually use cardstock. And I'll fold it here, and I'm just kind of folding it down really quick. I'm not doing a precise job, and I'm doing that on purpose. So you can see, okay, so I folded it in half. When I lay this with a window film or transparency in it, like this, what happens is you will see the back of one side. If I fold it in half exactly, you don't see that. Now, most of the time it's not a big deal, it's just a little bit there, but if this is on the front, that could be really distracting on your image or your window. So just something to keep in mind. Obviously, the thinner they are, because you want to fold them in half, the thinner they are, the harder it'll be to get an exact fold, but it can be done, of course. So you can use a scoreboard, but I find it works a lot better to just be a little bit careful And I'll kind of, another great way to do this is kind of to roll it around a pencil if you're using card, kind of just to get it with the idea that it's going to be rolling. So you kind of roll it a little bit around a pencil, and that makes it easier to fold exactly in half. So just a tip. And why am I sharing these now before we get started? Because it's just a little bit easier, I think, to know this going into it rather than having to stop when we're making it. See how it makes it a little bit easier for me to match those up? So that's just a thought there. All right, let me move that out of the way. Okay, so this is the first option or model. 3 pockets. Well, I guess it's a belly band and 2 pockets, and it's just a trifold. Here is a variation of the same thing. Instead of opening to the side, opening to the left, I am opening this one to the top. I used the pattern that I'd previously done on the cover of this one for decoration. I used a similar concept on this one. It's got the 3 pieces, a bit of faux cellophane and butterfly. And these are all pieces of Tracie's kit except for this background paper. It's just some scraps that I had of vintage dictionary. So this one's open up to the left, this one opens up to the top. Instead of putting the belly band in the absolute center, I put the belly band at the top to hold it as a drop down, so it could lay over like this. And then the pocket on the bottom, I used a cut apart from her kit, and then these particular flowers, and put it on the side rather than the top. And then again, one of the pieces from the kit as the card in the back. Just use scraps of lace or ribbon or cotton edge, cotton frame for that. And it's the same exact thing, just a different orientation. And one of the things we'll be making is I will show you exactly how to get this effect, either with paper, or with sewing the edges. So I'll show you how to do that. Another variation or options is this trifold, but instead of having 2 pockets, I just have the 1 pocket on this page, because this paper I thought was really pretty, and I let the paper dictate. And I have a little itty bitty window rather than a full-size window so that we could see more of the paper. So this one has a pocket and a belly band. Belly band is essentially the same. It opens onto the side again, but the pocket is up at the top. Now, if I wanted to add something else here, an image or a tuck spot, maybe I could fussy cut something and put a little tuck, whatever. You can add more afterwards, but the basic construction is the same. So that's this one that I had already had previously done. And here I used Tracie's kit to do essentially the same thing, but I altered it a little bit. Now, I'd said that I cut the paper directly in half, right? Well, on this one, I didn't, because if I'd cut this directly in half vertically, I would have cut off the top of the girl's head. And I didn't really want to. So I thought, if I'm going to make this a cover, I will make it the cover and make it just show. And so that's what I did. I altered it a little bit based on that. I used the top of the photo as my guideline to cut it, and then that became the height of my trifold, or my fold-over, multi-pocket trifold. It became the base. And then I could do another one right here with this as a scrap, or what I did, I believe, is I cut the bits that were left, because I backed it with coffee color paper. Coffee colored digital. I use this to make my cut aparts to tuck inside. So I used 1 sheet for the whole thing, essentially. And I left that to show you. And so here it is this way, and here I altered it. So this isn't a trifold, this is a quadfold. And I did it because I've got this really cool section here on the right of the image, and then I've got the bits on the left. So if I had just folded this into 3, again, I would have cut her off right around the middle of her body or something, and that wouldn't have given me the aesthetic. So sometimes it's a really good idea to use the image. Or there's an image on the front that you want, use that as your guideline and then fold accordingly. So instead of folding it into 3, I folded it into 4, but not 4 equal parts. I took the bit over here and used that as my score line, and I folded it. And then I created just that little window slit in that. And then because the size wouldn't have been adequate, I folded this over, and rather than having it touch and having a top opening, I put it as a side opening. So it's still the same formula, still the same format. I just altered the fold lines. See, and there you go. I used a bit of the leftover to make my tuck or to make my journal card for the tuck pot spot here. And then the same thing, I used journal card and then just some paper folded over as a writing spot to go inside there. So that's another option. These both use cutting out a window, whether you're using an X-Acto knife or a punch or whatever, but they use cutting out a window in one piece as a fold. So the first one just takes the transparency and creates a pocket to put on top. These create a pocket or a window that go inside. So that's why I'm going to show you two different kinds. So there's the second one and the way I altered the second one. And then the last one, the third, here was the original that I shared. Belly band, and instead of 3 pockets, again, this is 2 pockets, but because of the words and the orientation of the paper, I didn't need as much of the paper itself to show. I wanted a bigger, and I had bigger flowers, so I wanted more of the window on the inside. So I cut a larger window. And again, I used a bit for the back of the tag. So this is really only a 2 pocket. However, I could and easily would. The back is solid, so if I'm not gluing this into a book, I could easily put a pocket or a corner tuck or something along those lines on the back. All 3 use the same or similar belly band concept. So that was the third one that I'd already showed. And then I used Tracie's Lovely Layers and created a new bit. So you can see this is about the same, well, about the same width, but I folded it just a little bit differently because of the size paper that I had. Here, I did the same thing, but instead of having this pocket open, hold something else behind it, I just left, I closed the top, closed the side, closed the bottom. So rather than having something pull in and out, I just left it as a window. Again, just an option, like especially it works really well if you've got some of the thicker things like status or something. It's really, you don't have to make this into a pocket or a tuck. You can just make it into a window. And then I used a fussy cut of this really, really cute little girly girl that she had and used that as the bit for my side tuck. So I still have plenty of journaling space. This is just a sewn together journaling pad. With the same caveat, I could put easily a pocket or something back here. I could do a top tuck. I could do the side. I could, just do a fold over bit and put it on the side, whatever you want. But I'm going to show you how to do one of the cut aparts and how to do one of the others. So whatever you've got, whatever you need for your particular journal or project, you can alter it a little bit to suit your needs. Okay, so first thing I do is, let's see, I'm going to make 2 different ones. And let's do, it doesn't even really matter. When I'm doing this, I have, bits cut out and I put them in a bin so that I can pull them and use them as needed. That's personal preference. You do what works for you. And those are all from the Lovely Layers kit. Okay. Well, there's 2 ways again to do this part. I can determine the size of my fold based on the flowers. So if I'm using specific flowers and I want to make sure the flowers fit and I want it to fit in my book, I will cut the transparency first to the size that I need to accommodate the flowers. If I'm going in the opposite direction and I'm using the paper, I will fold the paper first and then make my pocket to coordinate to fit. I'll choose my flowers and make my pocket transparency window to fit inside the piece that I'm making. So if you have certain size flowers, do this step first. If you have certain size paper, do this step first. I guess that makes the most sense. So let's do, here, I'll put this aside. Well, it's just, since this is on top, let's do this one. This is 11 inches. So about 3 3/4-ish. And you can trim it off. That's the beauty of it. About 3 3/4 are where you want your folds. If you fold a little long or a little short, you can trim it. Not a big deal. Also, you can change, all mine are opening to the right with a pocket or image over here. Well, no, this one didn't. But you can change that orientation. Let's say I had an image right here that I really, really loved. Well, I can use this and fold it over this way and make my pocket on the left-hand side and the folding closure on the right. Now, for the front, I wouldn't really love that as the front because it doesn't offer much. But for this, it works really well. So I can do it like this. So obviously, I'm going to put something right here when I'm all said and done because only a portion of that flower and that word show. So I'm going to orient you have choices. You can orient it like this, and this will be your piece, or you can orient it like this, and then this will be your front. You choose. It truly, truly doesn't matter. I am going to flip it around and do this, and I'll just, wherever it goes. And I said about 3 3/4. A lot of times I'll do 3 5/8 just to give myself some wiggle room, but roughly 3 3/4. So there's my first score. I'm going to fold it over and line it up. Okay. And then most of the time I use this as my guideline. Now I did this. Oh, look, see, I folded it just a little too big. So I have a choice. I can leave this gap, which absolutely will work fine. It doesn't have to be a perfect, and I actually like the writing in there. I can trim a little bit of this off and then fold it over and score it so that it touches perfectly. Or I can take one of these extra bits, right? You know, fold over, scrap or what have you. And I can do what I did on this one and add like a handle basically. So you can see I wanted it for the thickness, but I can add like a little handle. So if I were to continue this fold and, oh man, I didn't make it score it on the right spot, I can put this little bit here, glue or sew it down and push it all the way to the edge, and then I make them touch. In this case, I actually like the way it looks with a little bit of overlap, so I'm going to do that. And let's see, so I'm going to fold this down. Again, this is a basic guideline, and you can alter it a little bit as you choose. So you can see this closes here, and there's a little bit of a gap there. And because if I put something big or bulky in here, I want to make sure that it fits well. Whereas this, I've folded it just to the inside edge, just to the right of the inside edge. Here, I've given myself a little more room. And you know, maybe I like, oh man, I really don't like it right like there. I can refold this. This is on the crease edge. Here, I'll show you what I mean. Maybe I just want that one strip to show, that one strip of words. I can refold it. Because of where it is and the fact that there's a pattern here, you're not going to see that previous fold. I still have a little bit of space there. I still have a little bit of word here, and it'll work just fine. Options. I guess what I'm trying to say is if you don't make it exactly the way I did it the first time, odds are it's still going to work really well. Okay, so this one, I don't really care about moss Dunlap. I am going to make this one the frame. I'm going to do this format, but rather than closing it off completely, I will, well, maybe I will. This one. Oh, here we go. I will do it so that you can make a pocket. I'll show you how to make it so that you've got a pocket at the top. Okay? And so I'll put these two off to the side in case we need to reference those, but I'm going to try to move them off to the side because the light on the transparency can be really annoying for people. So here we go. Let's go like that. Okay, so done here. Then what I do is I open this flat back up. Now, again, you can use regular weight paper, but I prefer to use cardstock because this is kind of a little bit bulky and it's going to hold some weight. I open it back up and I'm going to use my cutting board, cutting knife, X-Acto knife, and I'm going to use my see-through ruler. If you don't have one, this is an Omnigrid. Tim Holtz makes one. Really, really handy to see the lines through where you're working. I get to decide how large I want my opening to be. Remember, I'm marking on the inside of this. When I'm done, this is going to fold close, so those aren't going to show. I like at least 1/4 of an inch. I prefer about 1/2 of an inch, so I'm going to split the difference and put it in the middle, right? Line this up on my cutting board so that it's mostly straight. And then I'll use the guidelines on my clear ruler. And let's see, this would be 1/4 inch, this would be 1/2 inch, so I'm going to split the difference. And I'm going to do that all the way around. And I'll just mark it all the way down, top to bottom, just because for the sake of ease. And I'm going to do that all the way around. I'm going to do the split the difference, 1/4 inch. There we go. No, that wasn't 1/4 inch. That was 1/3. Sorry about that. I'm using the same guideline, whichever one it happens to be. Whatever the guideline is, I'm going to use the same one all the way around. And then I mark it like this with the lines, make it straight. And over here. Now, that isn't going to show. So if I were to do this on the top and cut it, and I would have to erase and make sure everything was gone, well, this is going to be on the inside, so it's not going to show. And then I use the same straight edge to guide my cuts. So let's cut that out. Many times, and I'm not alone in this, to make sure that you can see it, I will mark 4 dots in the corners so that I can clearly see where I'm supposed to start and stop. Some people will poke a hole in it with a pin. Some people will start with a punch. I just kind of make a dot. I'm going to use that as my guideline. My straight edge, probably need a new blade, but that's okay. This is not super thick. Start and stop. And I'm going to do that all the way around. And I just push into the edge of the blade when I do this, or to the edge of the ruler when I do this, to make sure that I don't go squiggly. I mean, I still do sometimes, but for the most part it works. Let's see, I didn't get it perfect. Oh, it came out. There we go. And this is the last one. And this is probably the most difficult part, I guess, for some people, especially if you have arthritis. If you have arthritis, use a punch, or use something else that makes cutting easy. The Fiskars trimmer with the string guide makes this cut a little bit easier with the start and stop point. So, all right. And there is my window. It's the same all the way around. I like to ink, so I'm going to ink that because I think it makes the edges stand out a bit more. When I know some of you have been with my channel for a while, so thank you for that and welcome back. But I use an eyeshadow applicator to get the corners of the inside. It works pretty well because it's kind of hard sometimes to get that inside point. Oh, you know what else works really well with this? If you have nesting template dies. So if you have a circle or an oval or a square or a rectangle nesting template die, that works really well for this too. You just tape it on, use your die cut machine, and that'll cut it out. That's a great resource if your hands don't like to cut. Okay, so I'm gonna get those corner edges. Okay, so I just do that for the corners, and then I'll just use my regular blending tool for the other pieces. I don't need a lot, I just want enough to not have that, to knock back that white edge. If you're not an inker, then this step is superfluous for you. I don't know why, but I've always liked that word. Superfluous seems to me like epiphany and contrary. They're just cool words, and you know, we need cool words in our life. Okay. All right, good enough. I almost said good enough for government work, but you know what? There's a lot of government workers, and I know they work hard too, so I don't want to belittle what they do. Okay, so there it is. That's my frame. And now I'm going to use that same ruler and measure. You can see I didn't measure it before. I'm going to measure my opening. I want my plastic to be wider than my opening, but not as wide as... but not too wide to fit inside that frame. So my grand total is just over 3.5, so 3 5/8. So I'm going to make it 3.5 inches wide. And then top to bottom, it's 4 inches. So I'm going to make it 3 3/4 long. So 3 3/4 long. What did I say? 3 5/8 wide. And I need 2 pieces of that. So I'm going to cut 2 at those dimensions. Now I'm going to forget what dimensions I said. I know that one of them was 3 3/4 and one of them was 3 5/8. Let's see. Yeah, it's close enough for me. Okay, look, actually that worked pretty well. So that was 3 3/4, and so I now need 3 5/8. So that means on my trimmer I don't have that. I am just going to split the difference between 3.5 and 3 1/4. I laid them on top of each other so I know they're the same size. And then I've got 2 leftover bits for a little itty bitty window if I want. And I have a little plastic sleeve that I put those scraps in just to make it easier to hold them. And I'm going to double check because, you know, I just don't always trust myself. So let's see. Yep, like that. And it's going to fit inside. And there we go. My first step when I've got this is I take a little bit of low tack tape. And the very first thing I do is I get just the edge of the low tack tape on the top, and then I flip it over, and I'm not putting the window film all the way up to the top because I'm going to use this to hold this closed while I sew it. And then I'll do the same thing here, just fold it over just enough to hold it in place because it's slickery while I sew it on my machine. So here, I'll put this up for you to look at while I'm sewing it on my machine. It literally, all I'm doing now, this is my handle to hold it together. This is my top. I'm going to sew just along this one top edge. That's it. If I were using this system, I would put glue this and clamp it in place until the glue dried. Okay, so if I were using paper, instead of, well, that's upside down. That's not so pretty. There we go. I would do it just like this and clamp it in place until it dried. In fact, I can sew this if I choose to. It just makes this, no, bad, Corey, bad. Disregard everything I just said. I don't want to sew it yet because I'm putting this inside. Whew. I do this step for this system. I sew the top for this system. I do not sew the top for this system. So since we're making this one first, disregard. I will still leave this exactly like this because it allows me a handle, but I'm not going to sew it first. And again, if I'm putting this inside here, I don't want or need this extra bulk. If I'm putting it on here, I can choose to. I can, make myself a little top to put on here. And I can do it on one side or all four sides, whichever. So I could, but we're not making this particular one yet. So I'll put that over here. Whew. So glad you said something. Thank you. For those of you screaming at me, don't do it, Corey. Thank you. I heard you. All right. I still do this same step. So we're still making these pieces, and I still do this step. I want to be able to open this, but still hold it closed, which is why I put this quote-unquote little handle down here. And then I know I've got about a 1/4-ish inch all the way around that the flowers aren't going to fit into. So let's see. I have this one, and I did make this really, what I thought was a really pretty, I might have to cut that down just a little bit. I cut the word shine off on purpose, but I liked this as the cover. I liked the way the colors played, and maybe I'll put a little bit of lace on there or something like that, but I'm going to use this for my cover because I have a friend that always needs more sunflower stuff. Always. But I'm going to make the piece in the window. And I think because I'm going to use this piece that's like an orangey yellow, I'm going to get flowers. I don't have a little itty bitty mini sunflower, but I'm going to get flowers that are that orangey yellow. And so I'll grab this, and then I'll look at what I've got. Well, this one, you can see the pinkish color back. You know what? Those kind of play nicely together. I could use this, or I could use that baby's breath that I tipped with that orangey yellow. And honestly, either one work. It truly doesn't matter. Truly, truly, truly. I'll use this one since it's in my hand. I'll move this, get this out of the way. Okay. All right. I'm going to place, this will be my top. It doesn't matter if it's top or bottom. It's just easier to hold. I'm going to place this flower inside here. Okay, just like so. Now on all the other ones you can see, I can sew it just like this. Sorry about that glare. Maybe that helps a little bit. But I also, you can see on almost all of them, I used some kind of a bit of the label or a piece of the kit to just add. And the reason I like doing that, a stamp, a label, it gives an anchor. Here you go. It gives just a Tracie label. It gives an anchor to hold the flowers in place while you're sewing around it. Because you can glue on the back of that, it's not going to show. And, obviously if you're using wet glue, you don't want it to show. But if you glue the back of that, it doesn't show. So I've got this sandwiched in between. And here's my rationale. These flowers lean more towards the right. So I'm going to put the label on the left. If the flowers lean more toward the left, I'd put the label on the right. That's the way I kind of do it. Let's see what I've got in here. What little bits and pieces, words or things. I mean, I guess, you know what? I could put a butterfly in there too. I think I've got some that are neutral colored. I don't remember off the top of my head what's in here. So, oh, here we go. Oh, that could work really pretty. It's kind of big, but you know what? That's okay. Maybe we'll use that. Oh, this one's smaller. Maybe I'll use him because he's just a little bit smaller scale-wise. Oh, but you know what I don't have for these guys? I don't have antenna. I cut those off because I can't see them well enough when I'm cutting it. But let's see. How can I make this work? Oh, that's kind of cool. It's a little bit of a scrap. I'm looking for a word or a label or something in my bin. That's all I'm doing. So, oh, here we go. Oh, that's got a flower on it. Oh, here we go. This will work just fine. I'm going to use this bit. It's a little offcut bit. I'm going to use that. And let's see how I can make this work. So I'm going to put the flowers over here. I am going to put, before I glue it, I'm going to lay this on top. I'm going to put this, maybe I'll put this up here a little bit, and maybe I'll have the butterfly like right here, and that way I can draw, using my fine tip marker, I can draw a fake antenna. You know what? That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I figured out my orientation. I lay the butterfly about where it's going to be glued, and then I draw the little antenna. Right? And then when I glue it down, I just move it up a smidge. And then, oh, you can't even see that. I'm sorry. Okay, just laid the butterfly down, drew the antenna, and then when I glue it in place, I move it up just a smidge so that the top of the little butterfly's body matches up with the antenna. Sorry about that. I didn't realize I was dropped down too low. Okay, but at least now I have my orientation. Now I'm going to glue this into place. See, I've got the top and bottom sheet, so I'm just kind of maneuvering it around in between the two sheets. I'm going to put a little, and I do mean a little bit of glue on the back, because the plastic is, or the acrylic or whatever material, acetate that material is, doesn't have any porosity. I don't know if that's a word. So when I push this down, all that glue is going to spread. So if I put too much, you're going to get glue seepage, bottom line. So I'm going to lift this up, and I think I said I wanted it right about here-ish. I want to keep this mostly straight, which is one of the reasons I like to put it on here, because it's really hard to see what's straight and what's not. Mostly centered-ish and mostly straight-ish. Sure, that can work. Okay, and I'll hold it in place. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the little butterfly, and it's more important for me to get the little butterfly with his, I'll put just a little bit of glue to hold it in place while I sew it. It's down below, but because I don't want to move it, but I just put a few dots. Here we go, I'll show you. I'll grab my tweezers. I put just a few dots of glue on the back of that butterfly to hold it in place while I sew it. Okay. And I'm going to lay this down right here where I want it to go. And then the glue on the paper will help hold that in place while I sew it. Okay, so I'm pleased with that orientation. Now I'm going to take my whole sandwich and I'm going to lay it inside my frame. Now you'll see my tape comes up top. That was intentional, and this goes out the bottom. I can clip it now, I can clip it later, doesn't matter. The stem, gone. Move this up so you can see what I mean. There's the stem reached out the bottom. So I'm going to hold this in place. This handle up top makes it so much easier for me. And I'm going to do the same thing with just a few dots of glue right in the very middle, just to hold it tack closed while I sew it. If I put any amount, it will seep out the edges. And that's not the end of the world or anything, but it's just one more thing you have to deal with. So closing that up. If I need to move it a little bit, I actually really like the fact that the butterfly's, the bottom of his wing is kind of, it's like going on in perpetuity. I'm not even going to try to say that word, out the frame. So I've got it like this, and it is not perfect by any means. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and I'm going to sew here, here, and here. No, I'm not. Try it again, Corey. I am going to take it to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew just along the top of here. That's the only place I'm going to sew. And I'll come back and show you why. Clearly talking and thinking at the same time today is just a bit of a challenge. Oh, I'm going to show you. These are my new scissors that I keep on the edge of my sewing machine. I have just a little bit of arthritis, nothing bad by any means, but these are great because you don't have to put your fingers inside the little holes. So they're perfect for my sewing machine and snipping they're just an Amazon thing, but they're perfect for snipping threads. Okay. And you can see I don't have it lined up perfectly over here. I'm going to now come in and trim that down so that it's not hanging out on the edge afterwards. And that holds it in place while I do any fine tuning. So you can see I don't have the edge of that plastic on there. And I have just the top sewn down. The reason I did this with just the top sewing it down is I want to be able to put a tag. Remember this one I said that I didn't put a tag in and out of the top, where I want to be able to take this and put this in and out. Okay, and that's why we have two pieces of plastic while we've got the flowers sandwiched behind. And now I'm going to take this and peel this piece off, and it comes off pretty easily because it's already done its job. It's not going to show, you're not going to see it. My thing is held in place, and then I'm going to sew the other three sides. So I'll do that real quick. You guys can talk amongst yourselves here. You can look at that if you want while I'm doing that. There we go. While I'm sewing this, yesterday my husband and I went to Aurora, Oregon, which we haven't done in a long time. But I'd heard there were some fun antique shops there, and I'd been wanting to go. So we went down, and I found some really fun treasures. So at another point, I'll share those with you. Found some to share with other people, and it was just delightful. From my husband's perspective, it's like, the number of antique stores versus the number of coffee shops or bake shops wasn't super. So he would have preferred a few more coffee or bake shops. But all in all, it was a very good day. We had good food and lots of fun antiques. So, okay, sewed all the way around those other three sides, and I'll come show you. I could have moved my sewing machine there, but that would have been a hassle because all the stuff that's on my desk. It's one of the reasons I keep the arm of my sewing machine over to that side. All right, so I've sewn it all the way around. You can see here where I peeled off that tape. Doesn't matter. It held it in place. It's not going to show. I just tore it off. You can see here sewn all the way around the edge. And now I am just going to glue it. I'll move all this bit to the side. I can use my clamps, but a lot of times I will just use my magnets. So I want it to open at the top. I could, because of the way I've done it, I could open it here, but opening on the inside that close to the fold is kind of and I could have it open at the bottom, but that's just generally not my favorite. So I'm going to remind myself that I'm just gluing it on three sides. This is something to keep in mind, and I didn't do it, and I'll show you here. I often will trim because this stuff doesn't glue great. Now you can use Fabri-Tac, right? But Fabri-Tac will spread like crazy with the acetate. It will hold it closed, but it'll spread like crazy. So it's not my first suggestion when doing this. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting a little bit more to the right of where I sewed, but to the left of the paper. I cut, and I didn't even do a beautiful job, but you can see I cut a little bit of that off. And I did it because I want the paper edge to touch the paper edge. You can see on the bottom, it's already just a paper edge, so I'll be fine. But I want the paper edge to touch the paper edge. So I'm going to put some glue there and here. Glue does work on the acetate, but it just makes a mess and it doesn't hold as well. So I did paper edge to paper edge, and I'm folding that over. And I'm just going to use my magnetic clamps while that's drying. All right, so that is the first one. The only other thing I need to do is find out where I put this. And I can use either one of these. It honestly doesn't matter. I could even use both of them if I want to. You know, I could layer one on top of the other as the belly band. You could have a double layer belly band. You know what? I've got both of them here. Why not? I use a generous amount of glue at the top. Now, if I weren't, I could sew along the top of this, and I do that quite frequently, but I don't really want that this time because of the other piece is the front. The other side is the front. So let's put this down here, and then I'll just trim it off a little long. We'll fix that part later. Okay, a little bit on the bottom, and I'll glue that down. Okay, and we said because we have it, why not? We're going to do a double belly band, so I did that there, and then I'm going to lay this right next to it and do the same thing. I'll trim off that top bit. And when I do this, a lot of times I'll ink the edge here so you don't get that white glare, but you also don't have to ink your lace if you choose not to. And I'll put some glue here. Just a little bit overlap. Make sure it's mostly straight. And I'll use a clamp. Is that one? Oof, there we go. I use a clamp, and then I'll do the same thing. Trim it down here. Cut that off, and I'll put a little bit of glue on the bottom. Again, dry time isn't super long. Make sure that's straight. Dry time isn't super long, but it's just, you know, nice to give it a little bit of a clamp. And so then this is, the glue's already had a chance to dry. And now all I've got to do is decide on, you know, use one of my scraps and make just a little tag to go in the back. Sorry about the glare. Ugh. But yeah, there's no avoiding it. The glare is going to happen because of the plastic. So sorry about that. So there you go. So that is how you do. Whoops, I clearly need more glue right there. And that is an easy fix. So there is number one. This should be dry by now. And that should be fine. And I'll use this to trim off the bottom. Okay. And then decorate the front, however you choose to. When I have this, I'll do the same thing. I'll take a label or a tab or something like that. But this doesn't really have anything to do with the construction. Obviously, I won't use this one because of the flower, but I could just put a word right there and lay it on. And then I would glue this right on top. Honestly, pardon me, I would maybe consider, I've got a bit of a scrap of a lace right here. Play with it a little bit. Maybe I'd glue this or glue this down. I don't want to sew it because of, and then just put this. So even though there's already layers on here, you can create additional layers. And, you know, maybe I would do something along those lines and then put a name or a date or what have you right here. And you know what? In fact, I think I might stamp that my friend's name and put that on there. So something like that. And I could sew this on before I glue it down. I could turn this into another pocket. Your options are, you know, endless when you create this way, and then just do what works for you. I kind of like the way those colors play, so that's probably what I'll do. So that is this step. This is how you make. Okay, it's really not liking the glue. You can see here I need a little bit more glue, and I need a little bit more time to let it sit. Okay, and that is one of the challenges with working with transparency. So there we go. I'll put that one off to the side, and then we'll move on to the next one. I'll give that a little bit more time to dry completely. Worst case scenario, I can sew that down. I can put another seam all the way right along here if it truly doesn't want to stay. And if this is my back and I'm gluing it in the book, it's not going to sew. It's not going to show. But you know what? Here, let's pretend. Darn it, I just can't get that to stay. Okay, here we go. Let's move on. I'm going to add another seam to hold it in place. Okay, adding a seam to put that in place. And now it's not going anywhere. I sewed this edge. Whoops, sorry about that. I sewed this edge right here. But if I'm gluing this in the book, fabulous. I still have my pocket at top. But if you can see that it's got this sewn edge. Now, some people don't mind that. Some people do. If I don't like it, I can take one of my little thin scraps and I can just put down I can glue this down. Well, maybe that's a little too thin for what I want. Maybe I'll take a little bit thicker piece and I'll make myself another band. Or maybe I can take a scrap of paper. Lord knows there's plenty of scraps. I can make a tuck. I can make a pocket. I can make a belly band. I can make anything I want. And then just glue it down there to hide it. And then I've got a side tuck. Okay. So if you need to make a change based on a challenge you're running into, there is always, always, always a way to fix that. Okay. So there's our first one. And then the second. All right. I have to remember what I'm doing here. The second one, I'm going to show you how to sew that, and that's this. So that'll be this orientation, right? Or this setup, the full-size window. Now, if I were doing just the small window like we did, what is it on here? No, not that one. That one's this one. That one's this one. If we were doing the small window like here and here, I would cut out just a smaller section. That's all. I'm doing the same thing. Here I just cut it out big. I do the exact same formula or plan, but I cut it out small. Okay. So this guy goes with this one. These two go together. And this one goes with this one. And here we go. So we're going to make this one now. All right. And then for this one, I have this piece of paper. And I had a thought with this, so I'm going to do something slightly different. Again, the basic construction is identical. You can just alter as you go. This one went in some book. Okay. I've got a portion, if I want this to be my cover. So again, same thing. Fold it in about thirds. And I can fold it about like this, and then fold it over in the windows in the back. And that's actually really pretty, but everything is sideways. And if you don't mind that, great. I'm not a huge fan of everything sideways. Another thing you could do easily is, here, let me fold this let me fold this one to show you what I'm talking about. There is no reason on earth that this can't be your cover, right? And then you open it up, and then you've got, this would have been on the inside. So if you want your window pocket on the outside, let's just pretend, for the sake of pretending, that you like this, right? And you fold it this way. So your pocket's going to be, your fold over piece is going to be on the left-hand side rather than the right-hand side. And you want to cut your window right here to make this your front. Well, you could. You could just fold it a little differently, and that window could be the front. You'd still have a pocket. You'd still have all the things. Again, this is sideways, so I don't know that I would do it that way, but depending on how your paper is oriented, you can. So, again, options. All right, this particular one, we are putting a pocket, and let's see. This is going to be the inside. I'm going to do about thirds. I'm going to put, and see that this word is down at the bottom, and this is sideways, but this is right up and down. So I'm not even going to score this one. I'm just kind of fold it because I can. And sure, that looks good. So if you don't have a scoreboard, you can still do this. And then this will be my top bit. And then I'll fold it over and line it up if I want it to fold correctly, or not even correctly, like a book. Okay. So here you go. See, fits nicely there, fits nicely here, folds over. Okay, that's essentially what I did. But I really like that this withered flowers shows at the top, and I could and I will. I can either slice this, which is going to make it not so sturdy, and it'll show on the inside. But I can also, let's see, I've got another piece of paper here somewhere. I fussy cut some of these flowers, like I did. I fussy cut this, right? But let's say I want this as a tuck, a front tuck. Let's see, that goes over here. I'm just going to look at the bits and pieces that I have. I'll just grab them. What the heck? Oh, you know what? She's really pretty. Now, see, I would use her, who's from one of the other images of the kit. She is really pretty, and I think she would look absolutely lovely right there, or right here under her belly band. Let's give her a little bit narrower of a belly band so she can stand out more. Where did I put? Here we go. I'll put it out like this, And I don't want to cover her face because her face is pretty. So when I'm putting this together, maybe I'll do it something like this so I'm not covering her face. I don't have to put my belly band flat in the center of my fold. I can put it off to one side or the other. And in this case, that's what I do. And maybe I'll put a little tab like I did here. I'll put a little tab on this to balance it. And I'll use just an offcut or a scrap of this piece to put it over here. It still holds her in place. It still does the same function, but I've altered it a little bit because, you know what, she's really pretty and she deserves it. And maybe I'll put this, oh no, I'm putting a pocket there, so no. Okay, so I got a tentative plan there. And that's one of the beauties of having a little bits and pieces. You can just play with it. So she's going to go on the inside there with my belly band. In fact, you know what, I don't have to do it in any specific order. I'll just do it just like this. I like her. I want to use her there. I'm going to ink this edge so that the white isn't showing so much. Sorry, I thought I inked everything first. Ink that. And while I'm doing the rest of it, that can dry. Okay, I'm going to lay her down. I do want that little bit of a tab, so I have to leave myself a little bit of room for that tab. If I need to, I can cut off a bottom of a little bit of her dress. It's not a big deal. I am going to put some glue right here and some glue right here. Maybe she'll fit, but if I need to, I can trim her down a smidge. And then I am going to lay this piece straight-ish. Lay it down because that's about where I want it. And I will do that. Okay, so I'm going to push that off to the side so it can dry. And we're going to make the pocket for here. Now, when I look at these, again, I'll look at the flowers, but I'm going to take a divot out of the top right here. I'm going to take a divot with my circle punch out of the top, and I want this to come down a little bit. I don't want my pocket, my transparency pocket to go all the way up to the top. So if my total is 4 inches, maybe I'll do it at 3 inches or 2 3/4. Yeah, I like 2 3/4. So I'm going to make it 2 3/4 inches tall, and this is about 3.5 wide. So maybe I'll do it 3 1/4. So what did I say? 2 3/4 by 3 1/4. Again, I'm going to cut. Whoops, there went that. Don't want to throw that away. So I'm going to cut this 2 3/4. I don't remember what I said now. That was a long time ago. 2 3/4 by 3 1/2, I think is what I said. So 2 3/4 by 3 1/2. Okay. And so that was the 3 1/2 piece, and now I'll do 2 at 2 3/4. I think that's what I decided. Okay. I don't know if I'm wrong. Well, it's fixable. All right. And it doesn't have to be exact. So yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go back and do exactly what I did before. Take a bit of low-tack tape. And this is either the top or the bottom because this one's oriented this way. So I am going to take my tape and put it here. I want to line these up as much as possible and put that over here. This is just designed to be a handle for me and to hold it in place. Okay, I want this one to be at the bottom, so I'm going to open this up and sandwich my flowers inside. Okay, so now I've got to figure out which flowers do I want to use. Actually, I don't even have to do that yet. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this as my handle, and I'm going to sew just along the top. I have no flowers in there. I have nothing. I'm going to sew just along that top edge. Again, I could have just sewn that paper over the top that I showed you earlier. Don't have to. I was thinking this was going to be a quick video, but I seem to not make quick videos. And one of the things that people have said that they enjoy or appreciate is the fact that I give tips to avoid errors. And I make mistakes all the time. So if I can share an idea with you to help you avoid an error that's frustrating, well, then I consider that a win so that you don't have to do the same thing. All right, taking that off. I've sewed the top together. My sandwich, so you can see 2 sides, right? Okay. Now I'm going to put the flowers in that I want to, and I wanted to use, sorry about my big old arm there. I wanted to use some of these, or maybe 1 or 2 of those, because I've had those for a bit. And I wanted the white baby's breath because it seems to go well with the ballerina and that image. Now remember, I had two kinds of baby's breath. I had smooshed baby's breath and unsmooshed. I'm going to go with smooshed. And you can see I've got a couple pieces here. And that's a nice thing. You can lay it on top of each other. That is unsmooshed. That is unsmooshed. Here's smooshed. Okay. Let's move the rest of these guys out of the way. Smooshed baby's breath. Now, I know it's going to be this width, and it doesn't really matter, you know, the front or the back of the stitches. I am going to put, now you can see here on this one, it's just a little bit of baby's breath, right? And they're all spread apart. And here, the baby's breath is kind of layered together. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this up. And again, I keep the handle on because this whole thing is going to show. If I were using this method, right? This method, okay, that's definitely dry by now. Let's get those out of the way. If I were using this method, it would still work just fine. So if you want a definitive piece at the top, you can just sew this right on or glue this right on. It's one more layer of bulk, and though I have absolutely no issue with bulk, I do have to be mindful that it makes the thing kind of chunky. So either that or not, whichever. All right, so you can see the majority of my flowers on this one are kind of, is that a dog hair? Hannah, I bet it is, because we get those little suckers everywhere. Hannah loves to leave her little hairs everywhere. Okay, and then I really wanted to use this, the last of this one, so then darn it, this year when I go to the Great Junk Hunter show, I'm going to have to get some more dry flowers. Okay, I'm being gentle with those. I don't want them to break, but I like the color. Does it say what kind it is? It says botanical. Okay, so that means it's a flower. Purple lace. Pressed botanicals, purple lace. There we go. All right. Now, while I've got this in here, I am going to put these pieces. I thought I would love it, but maybe I don't. Well, maybe I do. I like the play on colors. One would be not enough, but let's see about two. Does two work better? Okay, yep, I kind of like the play on colors there. There we go. Maybe scoot it up a little bit so that I'm not sewing right through it. And I can move that up a bit too, and that to the side. And then with it up like this, with the sandwich, I can just move things around where I kind of want them, ish. And then I want to put a label right there. All right. I like that. Okay, now let's pick a label. I don't have to put a label there. I mean, I can use one of these other bits, but I feel like that's too much. Oh, that's really pretty. I don't have anything stamped or a word on that, but that is one of the labels that comes in Tracie's kit. So let's see what else there is. Oh, she's got some of these whoozy whatsits, banner pieces. Okay, so that's a really pretty banner piece. Maybe it's a little big for this, though. I could cut it down. This one's a little bit narrower. I could cut that down, and this is going to be on top of this, so that'll be really pretty. Okay, maybe I'll do that. This is a banner piece that was in the kit. I cut it and inked it already, but it's just a little too long for what I need, so I'm going to trim it and put it right here. I didn't pull any stamps out, but I could absolutely put a stamped labeled date or something on that just directly from the kit. But honestly, I have tons of Tracie labels because I love Tracie labels, and I will just pull out a Tracie label to make it work. So I'm going to pull out my Tracie label bin and pick one that I feel like I could put a day of the week. You know what? That looks pretty together. See? Or I could do this one, just depending on, I'll look at both of them on top of that. February 4th, 1902. Let's see, which one looks better with that? Yeah, that's okay. And, yep, I like that one. So I'm going to use this. Put this one back. I'll use this Tracie label. I'm just going to ink that edge. Sometimes I ink them before I put them in the bin. Sometimes I don't. Okay, Tracie label. All right, so again, I'm still assembling this, moving things around a little bit. I really liked, maybe I'll do 3 bits. Maybe I'll do it like this and like this. You know what? Might be kind of cool. All right, so had a thought. Any word background stamp. doesn't, oh, you can't see because I'm going down too low. Quarry, here we go. Okay, so I've got this bit, I've got that bit, I've got my date. We've done one in the others, but let's do 3 in this one. So I want small word. Any of the background stamps that have words on them. Let's see. This one has a little bit smaller words, right? Background stamps. So I'll use this one. What do those words say? No, Chloe. Haven't looked. But I'm going to use that background stamp. Okay, and this is a kind of change and alter as you go. That's, kind of what I do sometimes. So there we go. I'm going to leave that there. I am just going to ink up a little bit of this section of my stamp. I don't need to ink up the whole thing. Put some ink on there. I don't know how dry or juicy this pad is. I haven't re-inked it in a while, but that should be enough. It's simply Ranger Archival ink. Use whatever you've got. And I'm going to try to make that mostly straight. I'm just turning it sideways because of how I want to hold it here. And I'm going to stamp down and give a little wish that it worked. Oh, yeah, there you go. Just a little bit of wording there. Excellent. Okay, now I am going to assemble these pieces prior to putting them on there because I don't want to keep moving them all around. It gets a little fussy, I guess, finicky. Glue a little bit on the back. Put this right here. Yeah, I like that. I've got this little offcut right here. Sure, that'll work. I had just a little bitty offcut. I'm going to zoom in just for a sec so you can see. A little, is that mostly straight? Yeah, we're going to call it mostly straight. I'm going to put this right here and put that little bit of lace right there. I could sew that, but I don't really need to. And I didn't balance that right, but that's okay. Don't like the way that lays. Don't like the way that lays. Okay, so plan B. You know what? It's my fault for not checking it in advance. Yep, I'm okay with that. All right, let's do this. And, maybe I could play with this and see so that it hangs down a little bit more. Let's see what we think of that. That's just holding it in place while I play. Yeah, I do like that. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do. Move it over a bit, move it down a bit, and then I'll straighten it. Okay, see, when they're little, it's kind of a little bit more fussy. There we go. And it's wiggling quite a bit, so what I'm going to do, and rather than lift it up and get more glue, I am going to anchor that. I'm going to use my tiny attacher. If I remember where I put it, you can use a regular stapler. You can use a brad, although that'll be a little bit bulky. Here's my tiny attacher. Okay. So that's basically another way to say a mini stapler. Okay, there it is. And then I'm going to staple that right on there. All that assembly, there we go, finishes off prior to putting it inside. Now, I'm going to make sure, I like it with the, actually, maybe I'll tuck that pink flower so that a little bit lays over the top. That's what I'm going to try to do. Just put a little bit of glue in back to hold it in place. Oh, I should need to zoom back out. Okay. And I'm going to tuck this here. I want this over here, and I want that like that. Okay. Need to move it in a little bit so I don't chop his little leggies off. And is that mostly straight? Yep. So I am going to sew it. Oh gosh, the glare. I am going to sew it around just like that. So I've got a little assemblage there. I've got the dried flowers. I've got this bit. I want this one to go up just a bit, I think. The baby's breath isn't showing out. Okay. I'm going to cut down at the bottom where they were attached, because that's not going to show anyway. I want to push this up just a little bit, and then I can put this pink flower. I don't want them to be parallel with each other, but I just want them to be a little offset, because there we go. And then I can do it like that, and it might wiggle around, but that's okay. Okay, I like that. All right, this guy moved. Okay, there we go. I want one a little higher than the other, and I like that. And this guy keeps wanting to move. There. Sigh. Okay. Now I'm going to sew these 3 sides, just the 3. I've already sewn the top, so I'm going to sew the other 3 closed. And here you can look at her, because she's really pretty, and you can look at this while I'm doing that. Okay. I'm going to use the previous guidelines, the edge, sew all the way around it. If I were using the paper method, I would sandwich it here, but I would have done my seam a little bit different with the paper method, because you have less real estate that shows. This edge of the paper seams would make it so that the bottoms of your flower transparency wouldn't show. And I'm going to show you something here, perfect example. I got it caught on the scissors that were here. So you can see I made, I don't know how well you can see it. It's not a big deal. It doesn't bother me. But if for some reason I don't want that little itty bitty bit to show, I can just resew it right down here and then trim that off. I don't mind. It doesn't bother me in the least. But if it did bother me, I could do that. And then I'm going to, so you can see sticking out the bottom there, I'm going to trim those down. And now this is ready to go right here. And what I should have done is laid it on top first, because I got sidetracked, but I am going to sew this on here all the way around. So I'm going to have a second set of stitches, which is okay because I have a second set at the top. I'm going to use a little bit of that low tack tape. Put this where I want it. I'm not sewing the top, and so the tape is a great place to go at the top. And now I'm going to sew around where I should have sewn before. But it's just an extra layer of stitches, so not a big deal. Got that done. Talk more than the make. So I walked through so many pieces before we actually did it. And again, I know how frustrating, especially for newcomers, it can be when you're doing something for the first time and I did what they did, and you make a mistake, which is why I kind of talk through some of those mistakes in advance, because I pretty much probably already made it. They're inevitable. And if there's going to be a mistake to be made, I'm going to be the person to make it, which is one of the reasons I do it the way I do it. So, I said I was going to take a little divot out of that. Yeah, I've got ink there. Divot size is your choice. A lot of times I use my 1 3/4 circle punch. Use what you've got. I also usually mark the center of it because, you know what? I've done everything wrong on this so far. So I am actually going to mark the center of this. Center-ish. I don't make it need to be perfect, but I don't want to be really off. So let's see. This is 3 5/8 I said. Oh, holy heck. So a lot of times what I do, if I'm not 100% sure, there we go. I'll match that up. And now I just move it down until I can get the center. So I don't have to actually do the math in my brain and figure out what it's supposed to be. And then I've got a bar in the middle that lines it up. I line this up to it, and then I know it's going to be close-ish. It's like those videos on Instagram that pop up that tell you how to cut the corners to mite or something. I would feel like that's what this is. All right, so there we go. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to glue, and I'm going to glue 2 sides because I want this pocket to open up at the top. And I want it to stay closed when I put my tag or what have you in there. Tag or notebook or whatever. I know this was a really long video, so my apologies. But sometimes that is what it is. Okay, there. Ooh, man, those magnets are happy together. And there, I'm going to let it glue. And then I'm going to put a little tab on her, and then she is going to sit. Does she fit? Nope, she's just a little too big. Well, darn her anyway. That's all right. She doesn't need the bottom of her dress. Totally overrated. She doesn't have feet anyway. Oh, I haven't inked the back. Maybe I'll put make it a little booklet or put some paper or something on the back so it's more of a writing space. There you go. And she fits nicely there now. And she fits in. You can still see her, that beautiful girl. Put the tab on there. Put a tag here, and it is done. All right. Whew. My apologies for the length. I hope it was helpful. I hope it made it worthwhile. Thank you for watching. Thank you for always being so kind. Take care and happy creating.